the legacy.
Since 1896 and the birth of the modern Olympics in Athens, we've witnessed a remarkable evolution in human performance.
Now the role of scientists in the achievement of new heights, distances and times is increasing.
100 years on, we turn our attention to the next 100. How far and how fast can humans go?
This is a program about what we can achieve in the future, not only in athletics, but in many sports. The crowds that watched that splendid and noble competition in this great arena nearly 100 years ago could never have dreamt of what we're about to show you.
The athlete of the 20th century.
Straight down the centre. Forward mark! Oh, what a mark!
A highly tuned and compact unit of raw power, controlled with intense mental focus, tuned to attain optimum performance, focused on reaching out and achieving their personal zenith. At the University of Laval in Quebec City, he is pushed to exhaustion. Effort rewarded not with first place, but with the vital data that may provide one.
In what we called East Germany, she started training for Olympic gold when she started school.
Press your hands together. Relax. And you'll feel a slight stick.
He's a batter with a legendary pro baseball team, the Los Angeles Dodgers. The injection of copper wires into muscles seems an outlandish measure, but what he discovers makes it worth it.
At the US Olympic Training Centre's swim flume, she's going nowhere to get to the top. Every stroke carefully analysed. At the very peak of competition, when does the scientist stop? When does the sportsman begin? Could science hold the key to a gold medal?
Science is the basis for improvement in human performance.
It's just crucial to the building of an elite athlete.
Certainly we're not doing anywhere near as much as we possibly could to use sports science.
Technology can move us forward.
So I can't ever see a time where we're not going to be breaking world records.
Most elite athletes are looking for some other type of edge.
We think there's a stack of world champions just walking around the streets.
Finding those world champions will be the responsibility of the scientist. And in the 21st century, the search will be over. The world's best performances will begin a long way from the starting blocks. They'll begin in laboratories like this, and they'll be the result of genetic engineering. Already we've greatly expanded the boundaries of this sort of science, and now there are groups right around the world determined to push that little bit further. They're already well on the way to manufacturing the super athlete.
And if anyone thinks that this will not happen, well, I hope they are alive in 20 years from now, because within that period of time we'll see the beginning of that.
He or she, and they'll be able to determine that, will be conceived after thousands of hours of meticulous manipulation. The manipulators will know that their product will be a champion.
Starting from the test tube, I think we have to envisage the day when this will happen.
The applications of gene technology are spreading fast. We can make fruit that stays fresher for longer. We can make sheep grow more wool.
And even before we came to understand the structure of DNA in 1953, the breeding of superhumans was contemplated, even if only in the fertile minds that gave us science fiction.
Now legislators around the world are grappling with bioethics, the moral and legal problems presented by something that is rapidly becoming science non-fiction.
In the USA alone, $3 billion is allocated to the mapping of every human gene.
Just the beginning of the application of the biotechnologies to sports performance.
It's a development that's certain to pale the controversy sparked by performance-enhancing drugs.
They will look like peanuts, yes.
Scientists playing God, driven by the very same fierce competitiveness that will characterize the athletes they could create.
And it will come. We will see that.
It is a secretive subject. Few scientists are willing to discuss it on or off camera. Science in sport could develop into a new sport, the sport of science itself.
Ok, Jaime, alors ici, on a des fragments de restriction génétique.
Claude Bouchard is close. His frustrating search is for the genes that keep muscles fueled, genes that replenish adenosine triphosphate, ATP. Put simply, the more effectively ATP is replenished, the more efficiently the human operates.
Bouchard and his team have exhausted hundreds of athletes on their search. Oxygen uptake, muscle performance and body fat are their clues to a prize of 10 to 20 genes. These will be the genes associated with a gifted athlete, and they will have to be identified from a pool of 50,000. Isolating the genes that make one human faster or stronger than another will change the rules.
Because we know now that in the future, some youth coming to the sports system were, quote unquote, bred specifically for that purpose. It'll have a lot of impact on society.
Here's a forearm and a fist.
The biotechnologies are available to undertake the search for these characteristics in an unborn baby. But is it the role of the scientist to dictate the path of life? Claude Bouchard says no. His work will help in a later stage of life. That's next. Super athletes in the nursery.
Hawaii.
The joy of birth as a mother discovers her child is a baby girl. Now she can have this information before birth. And once the gene pool associated with a gifted athlete is established, we'll be able to tell which sport the baby may grow to excel in, even before he or she is born.
But that would only be the first step. Creating an environment conducive to success and then recognising the potential champions to place within it is next.
Talent identification. Behind the Berlin Wall, it began in the 50s. Now the rest of the world is catching up.
Australia's only got about 20 million people, but then again, East Germany has about the same numbers. And East Germany has shown, with its regime of talent identification, for example, that it can beat the rest of the world.
Barely 2 years ago, some of these girls were striving to make the grade in sports like basketball and hockey. But that was before they learnt something very important about themselves. That knowledge has seen them become the best in Australia, in a sport they'd never even considered before. Every weekday at first light on Lake Burley Griffin, they begin a 2.5-hour ritual. Selected from a group of 500 high school students, they all had similar characteristics.
They were tall, they had long limbs, long forearms, but relatively short upper arms. They had a high oxygen uptake. They were strong. That power and the other characteristics are common to champion rowers.
We originally thought we'd take quite a number because we expected a large dropout. We thought that it would be fearsome for them, the workloads would be too great, it would be taking them away from their social group. But actually, the exact opposite happened.
They are now used to the early mornings, the calloused and blistered hands, and success in a sport they've never even considered before. But the concept of talent identification, particularly in Eastern Bloc countries, has a devious and some would say sinister image.
I think what we're seeing now in the 90s is the emergence of talent identification in certainly not a sinister way, but in a very, very pleasant way, where children are actually going to be more and more channeled into sports that they will excel at. But at the same time, we do know with those kids that the sports they excel at, they're going to enjoy more as well.
We've actually got a moral obligation to do it in some ways, to allow kids to make most use of their talent, because our evidence is they really enjoy using their talent. And that's, I think it'll come down to the schools eventually in 10, 15 years, that the schools will be implementing some of the things that we're discovering at the moment.
Gives you opportunities that you wouldn't have had otherwise.
The arms in.
Thought, well, I'll give it a try because I haven't done it before, and I went on from there.
Good work, Sam.
It's been taken from the model of the East German scheme, and we've proven that it's been successful here because we beat them last year, so we're going to keep going.
Winning, the aim of every competitive athlete. The ecstasy of victory provides the stimulus to carry on.
And what a fantastic swim.
It's a universal passion, but here they've taken it and put it to work for their country. After the break, the chosen ones and the well-trodden East German path to gold. Tonight. Since the 1950s, sport has been seen as the ultimate expression of personal achievement in East German society. The country's national sporting authority, the German Gymnastic and Sporting Association, boasts nearly 4 million members, about a quarter of the country's total population.
And her score's gone up, and the score for Dagmar Kirsten is 10. This is amazing. A 10 in a compulsory bar routine. Won't the East Germans be happy with that?
No surprise then that at the Seoul Olympics, 37 gold medals were draped around the necks of East German athletes. The 12 countries that make up the European community could manage just 34 between them.
Russia, but now a 10 on the uneven bars.
Those 37 gold medals represent the continued success of an elaborate plan, a program of regimented training that begins at preschool age.
She is barely 8 years old, but her face is somehow ageless. At this normally playful stage in life, she repeats her dives with mechanical precision. Yet she does it willingly, perfection, the only satisfaction.
For this girl, it will be a long day. 6 hours spent chasing the elusive, flawless routine. This is what the system is all about. It is a system that will not settle for second.
We think of it as a sports regime, and it is a product of the Cold War, of a period when East Germany had few men and many more women. the country faced economic constrictions and the accusing finger of the Western world.
Politically, it was impossible to score points, but not in the sports arena, where ambassadors wearing tracksuits and the grim looks that precede victory were able to distract the world from real life behind the wall.
Before they begin to read and write, they undergo tests to determine which sport their body suits.
Can't remember
Helen Pereira worked as a sports scientist for the East Germans for 7 years, specialising in computer models for predicting human performance.
We went out and did these tests to measure all these kids and then said, okay, here's a swimmer, there's a basketballer, here's someone showing the characteristics of a rower.
Cornelia Ender is fourth from the top.
I know for a fact Cornelia Ender was chosen, who won an Olympic gold, several really, in the Montreal Olympics, was chosen into the swimming program when she did not know how to swim. In other words, they measured her bones, her physical characteristics, and said, oh, she has the body shape and form and the physique for a swimmer.
Cornelia Ender was one of 15,000 six-year-olds tested at that time. She went on to take 4 gold and 4 silver medals at the Olympic Games. Those selected grow up with the system. The development of their physical talent is intertwined with conventional education. A typical school day for a gifted athlete will consist of 2 hours schooling, 3 hours training, another 2 hours schooling, and a further 3 hours spent training.
The difference is the input of so many different academics. About 380 of the country's leading professionals in diverse fields from physiology to biochemistry to mechanics to medicine, they all have input into the program.
When school ends, there is only training. If you're an athlete in what was the DDR, sport is your job.
In the West, we have seen athletes make a great deal of money for 1 or 2 years. But then they have to start working or get a part-time job to keep themselves going. We don't have to do that. Our wage is adequate, and it makes it possible to really live well from sport.
Their remarkable success is often seen as a direct result of the system. But until recently, there was one word rarely mentioned in discussions about the DDR's sporting supremacy.
I have to say that particularly from 1989, we are focusing our attention more and more on the battle against drugs, which has been of growing international concern and a not insignificant issue of the Olympic Games in Seoul.
The open reference to drugs is a long way from the deliberate secrecy that has surrounded details of East German training methods for years. Medication may have played a part in their run of gold medals, but there is no mistaking sheer dedication. Some of the methods may appear crude, but they can also be misleading. The performance of the athletes has been matched by that of the scientists.
The DDR has been very effective in the broad range of what we would call sports science.
In the altitude control chamber, they watch B-grade spaghetti westerns. They also breathe the same air and train in identical climatic conditions to those of Barcelona, the site of the next Olympic Games.
In the lead up to a major championship or even the Olympics, the cyclists will train and live together for up to 2 weeks here at Kienbaum, sometimes spending a grueling half day on the bikes. By the time they're ready to race, there isn't a single piece of information about any of them that has slipped past the coach. Kienbaum, on the outskirts of East Berlin, is a honing camp. Every athlete who has represented the DDR spends the final weeks before a championship refining their performance here, many of them in the climate chamber. By simulating the environment of the next Olympic Games, scientists can adjust training schedules to coincide with the adjustments the body will need to make for the different conditions.
As a training tool, these chambers have now become common. It's just that the East Germans began using them decades before anybody else.
At the United States Olympic Training Center in Colorado, there is very good reason for the steep upswing in the learning curve of scientists working with swimmers.
You know, the flume is only 2 years old now in the U.S. And in the last year and a half, we learned more than we have in the last 30 years.
The East Germans had a swim flume in 1970. The rest of the world is only now beginning to make up lost ground and realise the growing value of a good team outside the pool or off the track.
The country who can use scientific information more accurately than another country will have the greatest chance of success.
Already the East Germans are losing their grip. Their reputation as the best is seriously threatened, if not already gone. Other nations adopting their own versions of what has been a phenomenally successful system, and changes in the German political system may mean we'll never witness such a level of ascendancy by one nation again. Or will we?
East Germany's dominance is perhaps matched by one other group of sportsmen and women, defined by race, not country. Next, black athletes. What puts them so consistently ahead of the rest?
Saturday. Jesse Owens. When he disrupted Hitler's plans for white supremacy at the Berlin Olympics in 1936, the words sport and science had never been used together.
With no starting blocks and a heavy track, Jesse Owens took 4 gold medals. Despite all our technological advances, we've only managed to shave 0.3 of a second off his 100-metre time.
Why was Jesse Owens so fast? Was it his training? Was it his natural ability? Was it because he was black?
Generally, the blacks physically in many cases are made better. I mean, I can look at it and tell that. We generally carry less fat, I mean the athletic ones. We have longer levers, and those are the 2 things I think that are the major areas that help us sprint better.
The sporting feats of Australia's Aborigines earn almost awestruck praise. They are classified as Australoids. A sixth sense has been suggested, as if there really is some gift the white man wasn't given.
Look at the skill of Nicky Winmar.
Negroes dominate basketball everywhere. At home, 3 out of 4 players in the National League are black.
It was an all-black final in the men's 100 metres at Seoul. Do black athletes have an advantage? Some researchers say yes.
I know the American system is very sensitive to statements of blacks and white, but you cannot defy science. I mean, you cannot tell day is night and night is day. I mean, things are facts. I think it's to the advantage of the black athletes to be proud that God was on their side.
He's black.
Some coaches say no.
Because that's the racist attitude that blacks are natural because they're naturally lazy, so anything they get, they don't get from hard work. They get because God just gave them the right gene pool.
There are basic anatomical differences. One set of tests conducted in the United States suggest that black children have a far higher level of coordination. Of 30 tests, whites led in only 3.
Muscle biopsies taken from hundreds of black and white people, non-athletes, reveal a striking difference. The lighter coloured areas are slow twitch muscle, common to white people and good for endurance performance.
The dark areas, fast twitch, good for short, sharp, explosive performance and more predominant in the African Americans tested. But some researchers are still far from convinced of a perceived genetic variation.
Whites have always felt very comfortable with blacks being involved in activities that required physical exertion. They've always been very comfortable with blacks working in the fields, whether they were cotton fields or football fields.
Dr. Harry Edwards says people like Philip Crump confirm his theory that it's environment and culture that shape a good athlete.
You know, when I get on the court and I see a white guy stick me, you know, I think I could take him. That's natural, you know, because every black guy thinks like that.
Basketball today is as black in its cultural configuration as the gospel and jazz and other kinds of cultural expressions in this country that have been tremendously influenced by black people.
The motivation to succeed and daily hard work have made him the hottest high school guard in Philadelphia, and basketball is one of the very few ways he can escape the ghettos. And it may be this harsh environment, more than his genes, that shaped his destiny.
Final day of competition, men's marathon, the showcase event.
Blacks won every men's running event at the Seoul Olympics, except the marathon. They were second and third in that.
They've got away, and it was Wakahuru who started to
It was Douglas Wakahuru who finished second, missing the chance to complete a unique record for his country. The marathon is the only foot race longer than 400 metres the Kenyans have not won.
They've won 21 long-distance running medals, 8 of them gold. An unprecedented dominance that really began in 1968 with one man, Kipchoge Keino.
Kip Keino's 1,500-metre gold at Mexico City smashed the racist theory of the time that black runners were no good over the longer distances because they were events for thinking men.
It's another one of those myths that exist about black people, and Keino destroyed that. I've always believed in the supremacy of the black athlete ever since I've been here. I don't think I would have stayed here as long as I have if I hadn't seen this vast potential that exists here and been happy to work with it.
31, good.
The headmaster at St Patrick's School, home to many of Kenya's finest future athletes, explains that vast potential with 3 words.
I think it is the altitude, I think it is the diet, I think it is the tradition.
Despite the often long distances involved, the children never walk to school. Tradition has inspired the new generation to believe that true success in life is found on the running track.
And the diet is based around a starchy cornmeal called ugali. It is rich in carbohydrates. For the endurance athlete, perfect. Many athletes live all their lives at high altitude. All take advantage of it in their training. Running is a way of life here.
Running was just fun to me. I didn't put much effort. It comes naturally. When you've done a lot of training, it just comes naturally.
Next, the unnatural advantage, the new drug that provides dramatic improvement and defies detection.
Dutch cyclist Johannes Dreyer. So badly did he want to win on the highly competitive pro cycling tour, he took erythropoietin. EPO is a natural hormone produced in minute quantities in the human kidney. It's also the very latest in a disturbing trend of renewed and very cunning use of performance-enhancing drugs. The synthetic version of the drug is impossible to detect in the human bloodstream. Dreyer took his course of EPO, knowing the drug had killed 12 other Dutch long-distance cyclists in just 6 months. The endurance athlete's ability to transport oxygen around the body is critical.
To do it, they use the hemoglobin molecules found in red blood cells. The more of them they have, the greater their reserves of power. The number of red blood cells can be increased by training at altitude or in conditions that simulate it. The thin air almost commands the body to begin making extra red cells. The greater numbers of hemoglobin molecules are able to grab more oxygen from each breath of thinner air. The once common practice of storing a distance athlete's frozen blood and then re-injecting it on the day of the competition has now been banned.
EPO achieves the desired effect more conveniently and efficiently. Tested athletes using the drug increased their hemoglobin count by an average of 33%. The desperate young cyclist's blood became so thick with the additional red cells that his heart was no longer able to pump it around his system.
40 years after steroids entered the sporting arena, Johannes Dreyer became EPO's victim 13.
If you wait for 40 years to catch up with the new generation of problem drugs, half your team's going to be dead by the time you found the solution.
983 the world record.
The showdown
Lewis
that
set.
appeared to symbolise the Olympic ideal.
Away, Johnson a great start, Lewis not too bad, Stewart away well, Johnson in front, Lewis coming at him, Johnson's got a great lead, he's going to win!
Pumped up to an unnatural level by massive doses of anabolic steroids, Ben Johnson's body breasted the line first. His disgrace highlighted a growing number of aspiring competitors abusing drugs.
Look at him, he's fantastic.
We came across the case of a young bodybuilder, aged 23, dropped dead the morning of a competition due, the coroner found, to prolonged use of anabolic steroids.
We've got them, and we've got to learn to live with them and make the best use of them that we can.
Okay, Rob, how's that going?
Tony Miller was a doctor with the Australian Olympic Federation. He believes the temptation to use drugs to win is so powerful that it's safer for them to be prescribed.
I like to prescribe them myself because it means that they use smaller doses for the same benefits as they would get with larger doses.
You can walk in and see Tony Miller, you can walk down the street and see another doctor, get another script, go down the street and see another doctor and get a third script and then a fourth script.
John Black has committed himself to purging drugs from sport. Most would deem that task impossible, yet he won't even consider the idea of legalising some drugs.
Well, you're just going to end up with an Olympic team that looks like something out of a circus tent, basically. You're going to have a bunch of freaks representing your country, most of whom won't live past 30.
Very good.
Our only hope may be in the education of athletes about other methods of boosting their performance.
Every time his muscle fires, the electrodes measure the electrical activity.
As a muscle contracts, there's a very natural electrical current which goes. And the ends of the wires that you saw during the insertion are bared of insulation, so it is picking up that electrical activity and transmit it to our console. So we are indeed watching the muscle contract.
The researchers are most interested in the order in which the various electrodes fire.
Go. Ready?
From tests like these, we now know that it's the lower portion of the body, the legs and trunk, that initiate the swing. Many batters and their coaches previously believed it was the arms that were most important.
Rob's printout indicates that he's making the same mistake that a lot of batters do. The timing of his swing is out, so he's not hitting the ball with the optimum power or control. Rather than beginning the action in the lower part of his body, the results show that the muscles in his arms are firing before the muscles in his trunk. Not only does this limit his batting ability, it could also lead to future back injuries.
Technology can move us forward.
But how far forward? And at what price? Since the 1968 Olympics, female swimmers have cut more than 5 seconds off the time for 100 metres. Male track sprinters have whittled only 0.03 of 1 second from their 100-metre times.
If there is a zenith point in human performance, and if we're now approaching it, we're doing it with all-consuming training programs.
A lot of people would concur with the idea that perhaps now humans are engaging in physical training that really is above and beyond what they were really designed to participate in.
And up to 525, same
as last time. Just push it through, Simon.
And the modern athlete uses fuel that may not be good enough for the quite exhaustive task often set.
We've got this, I guess, minority of people, the elite athletes, that are overexposing themselves to exercise. Now, if this is true, perhaps the sort of food that is normal to our population may not be optimal for the athlete.
Today's research doesn't focus on new foods, but rather new combinations of ones we already have. As well, scientists are investigating different ways of administering food groups, in liquid or solid form, before, during or after exercise.
It is in areas like this, and not drugs or genetics, that most would prefer to see science shaping the level of performance in sport.
Already, many feel the human body is so close to achieving physical perfection that they've turned to another area to achieve even more striking improvement.
Next, manipulating the mind of the athlete.
Sunday.
If science and technology can produce the perfect athletic body, and we assume that all these people had that body, there's still one thing that separates them all. It could mean the difference between first and second.
And she has lunged much better than Ledovskaya.
In the future, that difference will be found more often in the control of the mind.
She's got it!
Time for it, Jeff.
Defensively, we're all right. They can't beat us, can't beat us, can't beat us. Set the trend early, set the trend early.
The training is done. The body is tuned for a game that is now only a handful of thoughts away.
We've got to win by one, we win by one.
It's too late for a physical boost.
End of this year competition, points for and against are going to be very important, very important, very important.
These tense minutes are reserved for the tuning of the mind.
Early kick and then we chase.
Every athlete has their own method of mental preparation.
We've got to go up both sides,
Their own way of elevating their consciousness. They clamp onto a level of such concentration, it transforms into something like a trance, a state where the subject of focus is so intense, the athlete can appear oblivious to anything else.
Just move up both sides on every play, on every play, on every play, on every play.
Sports psychologists call it the zone.
That is an elusive state to reach. The zone is when it's almost effortless and automatic, where you're on autopilot and it just flows.
And it's a matter of teaching the athlete to be able to turn off the conscious activity and turn on the feeling associated with peak performance and the confidence, the optimism that I'm just going to take total command here.
Then we try, every play,
Every play, every play.
Often the athlete reports not experiencing the usual pain or fatigue that they would. A long-distance runner will say, I finished the race and I felt like I still had a full tank of gas powering me over the line. It's just a very enjoyable and satisfying state to reach, and that's why a lot of athletes want to try and reach it again.
Yes, he's got a 2.8 degree of difficulty, a back 1.5 somersault with 2.5 twists, and he does this very well indeed.
At Seoul, Greg Louganis had 3 stitches inserted in the back of his head after he struck the board. Even that failed to prise his mind from the zone.
The crowd was cheering as he took off because there aren't many spectacular dives in this section. Greg's gone ahead and done 4 very simple dives and left his big guns for this one.
You're really talking about Olympic performance and professional sport performance. Most of those athletes are fairly equal in terms of athletic ability. It's the ones that might have that little bit more determination or mental toughness or able to focus a little bit more effectively could be the difference between superior performance and average performance.
I think sports psychology has only just begun to tap its potential impact on the athlete's performance. Tell yourself the stress you're feeling is perfectly normal, that it's your body's way of telling you that you're ready for a great performance.
Shane Murphy, a psychologist at Colorado's US Olympic Training Center, is putting an athlete through his performance, mentally, in what they call the egg chair.
I want you to concentrate on the muscles of the neck and shoulders. Repeat your key phrase to yourself.
He's imparting a skill they don't teach at high school. The athlete is learning to focus with an intensity that doesn't allow intrusions.
That's the whole idea of mental training. Learning how to be competitive, learning how to be mentally tough, how to be more focused and confident is a learned skill.
The very best world-class shooters reach an even higher state, what the scientists call a zone within a zone. Here, the control over mind and body is so complete that they regulate their heartbeat, slowing it to a pace where they can fire between beats, to a pace where it doesn't disturb a steady arm or a fixed eye.
Psychologists are now essential members of sports teams competing at the top level.
The athlete that is really driven for achieving that state of excellence will do all they can to be the best athlete they can possibly be. And hopefully in the year 2050, sports psychology and mental training will be such an important part of that.
In the year 2050, how important will psychology and the other sciences be in the performance of our finest sportsmen and women?
There's no question that the more we study and the more we're involved with athletes attempting to obtain the highest level of performances, the more we learn.
This is going to be fast.
At the Olympics, the difference between a gold medal and just making the finals is regularly less than 1%.
Few would argue that 1% could be achieved with the appropriate application of sports science.
Coaches will turn to science to monitor their athletes and to find out what works and what doesn't work and how that athlete has responded.
But is there already competition between the scientists themselves?
We will be able to say around the turn of the century, at the hard set of the third millennium, that science is ubiquitous in sport performance.
And what a scene this is. Duncan Armstrong receiving the gold medal for his world record performance in the 200 metres free.
Quote-unquote bred specifically for that purpose.
Already we've greatly expanded the boundaries of this sort of science.
Cornelia Ender-Eastern. She went on to take 4 gold and 4 silver medals.
For this girl, it will be a long day.
Keep it going.
Was it his natural ability? Was it because he was black?
Finding those world champions will be the responsibility of the scientist.
Technology can move us forward.
You know, when I get on the court and I see a white guy stick me, I think I can take him. That's natural,
The zone is when it's almost effortless and automatic, where you're on autopilot.
Science is the basis for improvement in human performance.